Hello, everybody. Welcome to Drew Crime Live tonight. I am testing out my new microphone, so if I sound kind of weird, good, bad, or ugly, let me know. Everyone in the live chat. It's good seeing everyone here. Hey, Bible group, how are you? Red Feather, of course, never misses a show. That makes me really happy. Nobody, good seeing you. I'm gonna wait for some people to pop on, get the notification. Already up to 10 people in the live chat. I want to hit 60 on the live chat for this show, especially with this awesome guest coming up. Hey, Russell Streams. That's my goal with this show. I want to hit 60 in the live. Um, my ego demands it. My ego demands 60 people in the live chat. So if we don't get there, start calling friends, call your neighbors, get them on this show tonight. See. That's right. It's Suffer. I forgot. Yeah, you are. I keep forgetting, Suffer, that you go under Restless Streams. You haven't emailed me in a while, so definitely send me an email and let me know your thoughts on some of that new stuff. Oh, and by the way, I have a new Subscribe Star coming out. I need to get that out tonight. I was editing it, and it will be up tonight on the Zodcast. It's a pretty good episode of some stuff that Tony sent me, and I also want to give a shout out to Jason in Kentucky. Jason's going through some really hard times right now, but I think he's going to come through it. He's another guy that sends me a lot of Zodiac killer research, and I like kind of vet it for him, and we talk about that a lot. So shout out to Jason for sure in Kentucky. Hope everything's going fine with Jason. So what I want to do now is I'm going to bring on our guest, and this is of course Darren Schaefer of the Cooper Vortex, and I've got a history with Darren. He's a friend of mine. He's an awesome dude. He's probably the coolest dude I've ever met through doing any of this. And for me, it all started with Darren Schaefer, because it's the first show I ever did on anything was his podcast called the Cooper Vortex. Of course, it was about DB Cooper, and I've never done anything. I had never done a YouTube video, nothing until that show that I did with Darren Schaefer on the Cooper Vortex. So it was so cool that he had me on, and how that experience went, and it was just fantastic. So I'm going to bring him on now. How you doing, Darren?
Pretty good. How about you, Drew?
Doing well. Good seeing you.
You too.
So there's a million things I could ask you, and of course, you and I could get into the weeds so quickly on Cooper and never come out of the weeds. But I don't want to do that. At first, I would definitely want to ask you about the whole podcasting thing, because you know so much about it, and I don't. And I know you already have seen, all sides of this. But I know a lot of people that are probably tuning in tonight probably don't know how you started the Cooper Vortex, and I know the story really well, and of course you've told it a million times, but can you give us the real condensed version right now? And I mean, I know you're from it's Woodland, Washington, correct?
Yeah.
And so you're from the area, but you did not. I mean, you're from right around the drop zone of DB Cooper, but you didn't get into it till you moved to Idaho, I think. So
That's correct.
pick it up from there.
So I moved to Idaho shortly before we left Washington. My wife bought me this book, Skyjack by Jeffrey Gray. And it sort of sat on my bookshelf for a while. We moved to Idaho. I was traveling. I grabbed that book and I just fell into this vortex. And that led to the next book and the book after that. And I also started this gig where I work completely alone. So I listen to 40 to 60 hours a week of podcasts and talk radio. And so I just searched Apple Podcasts, DB Cooper. And this is like 2016. And there was like 40 shows that had done an episode on DB Cooper. And so I was like, hell yeah, I'll just start burning through these things. And they were all exactly the same. It was 2 or 3 hosts. They'd spend 20 minutes telling you about the hijacking. They'd spend 10 minutes going over 3 or 5 different suspects. And then they'd spend 5 minutes agreeing which one was most likely. The case was done. And that just really wasn't what I was looking for. So I had this idea, okay, I'll just create the show I want to listen to myself. I want to hear long form interviews with the authors of these books I'm reading, with the people who are arguing on these online forums all day long. So I Googled how to create a podcast. And
I got a copy of your books up here, by the way. That's your bookshelf on the left, and it's missing one
grown
important book, but I know you added it later. But this is Darren Schaefer's DB Cooper book collection, which is awesome.
And I'm pretty sure I've read all those. I haven't read Ha Ha all the way through, but
So you have the infamous Ha 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 book?
I do. I do have a
Yeah,
copy of that. I got
that's
it
a
from
hot
Brian
item.
Woodruff himself.
Oh, now that's interesting. Now I know unfortunately Mr. Woodruff passed away a couple of years ago or so. Um, and of course he's the son of the owner of the Ariel store.
That's correct.
Okay, because yeah, it's perfect that I had this slide because it has your books on the left and then the picture from the Ariel store on the right. And whatever became of, I mean, I know because you said it on the podcast, there's a new owner now that may try to open it again, but it's going to be kind of daunting.
Yes, there is a couple in Woodland who purchased it, and they have big dreams for it, but it's going to be a chore. I'm pretty familiar with that building. The idea that it could be turned into a place that could be permitted is a lot of work.
Oh, I bet you said that you have to. I mean, I love it the way you describe it because you describe it so well. You said there's no parking lot. You got to park on this, just a pitch black road a couple of miles away and like hike down and dodge all the eddies and trying to make it there because there's no parking, right? You just gotta, especially I guess when the DB Cooper Day party was going on, you'd have to park really far and walk through the woods. You said, I mean, I just love that whole setup though. It'd just be such a cool experience having to trudge through the woods that DB Cooper may have landed in to get to this place to, have a couple beers on DB Cooper Day.
I would love to know that he went to DB Cooper days.
Incognito.
Or dressed as DB Cooper because
Yeah,
there were many other people that were as well.
Exactly. Is the sign still in the window? What is that? What's the brand of that beer? Is it
Rainier?
Rainier. Is that still there? Of course, the famous sign below it, the home of DB Cooper Day.
I'm sure Brian's family had that. They had sort of a garage sale from the store, and I know they kept some memorabilia for themselves. In my opinion, that's like the crown jewel right there. That
Oh, it is.
flashing Rainier DB Cooper sign. It's so badass. I would kill to have that.
So did it get sold? Do you know? I mean, is it?
I don't believe it was sold. I'm sure his family has it in their possession. If you put it on eBay, I'm saying it goes for $7,700.
I bet every bit of it. Oh, I mean, it's a set. I couldn't imagine. I mean, it would bring the highest amount of money than it ever has. I used a picture of that in a video once, and Mr. Woodruff saw it, and he wasn't too happy. He said, "You don't have permission to use our picture." And Ted Braden was not DB Cooper, and he was from Pennsylvania. I was like, "Okay, bye."
It sounds like something Brian would say. Brian was pretty cantankerous until you became his friend, and then the sweetest guy.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like it, so I didn't tie it up with a guy. I understood, that because that's kind of his thing, that's his claim, and that's super cool that his family owned that, and so I totally respected it. Yeah, I would have done it if it upset him. So actually, I took it off. So I was like, okay, I don't want to make this guy upset. But so anyway, so you get into it that way, and I know, like you always said, that you had these interviews already lined up for the Vortex. And you were at the point of, well, I guess I better just go through with it, right? You'd already started calling people. Like I know Bruce was the first guest, and then
I sent out 5 emails. I sent an email to Bruce Smith, Brian Woodruff, Ron and Pat Foreman, Bradley Collins, and Robert Blevins, and they're all sort of in the same area of Washington. Brian was a little bit further away, but I thought if I could get 2 of those 5, I would go forward and create the podcast. And all 5 people got back to me and said, yes, I'd love to be on your show that doesn't exist yet. So I loaded up my car, drove to Washington, did those interviews, and I'm still doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So like Bruce was one of the first, and that was a great show. And that's how I came about it. A friend of mine heard it, and I had done some research. I was always been into DB Cooper and never expected to get this deep into it. And I run across a suspect I like on the Drop Zone. I think it was actually it was a DB Cooper forum, which I've never been a member of. And because better than anyone how those guys get. I mean, they're cutthroat. They're like, we know it better than anybody. Don't even come near us. And everybody battling for their suspect or their theory or the Drop Zone or the Tina Bar. And I'm like, I didn't have the stomach for it, but I was a voyeur. I loved reading it all. And I mean, and I know you were getting in those groups, but you were always neutral and kind of like, just soaking up the vortex, which was fantastic. But I know you mentioned on one of the podcasts, like how nasty some of the people could get in these groups. Like they were like, doxing people, or even like, didn't somebody get swatted once? Like had the cops called on their house or something?
Kind of. So a gentleman was going to speak at the Auburn Public Library on DB Cooper. I'll just leave names out of this. And a bomb threat was called into the Auburn Public Library to theoretically stop this presentation from happening. And he pointed to the gentleman who was going to speak, pointed to another member of the Vortex who had nothing to do with it. So the police knock on his door. Did you threaten to blow up a public library?
Oh man. Oh, they're tough in there. I mean, even Bruce, who's a veteran, obviously the mayor of Cooperville, Bruce Smith, one of the greatest guys ever, had his going for it. It's Georgia and all those regulars would be just like old married couples just going. I mean, I'm sure a lot of good stuff came out of it. It did for me because it was just reading it one day. But when I had this theory and I learned more about my suspect that I like, and I thought, man, I'm going to reach out to this guy. And actually, I looked back at that original email and I sent it to you and Russell Colbert, who's your co-producer and your sound guy. And so I thought that was cool. I wanted to send it to both you guys and see what happened. And then you wrote me back. I was like so stoked. I was like, man, this guy actually is going to have me on his podcast. So I thought that was cool when you mentioned on another podcast you did. I think maybe it was yours. I don't remember. I've listened to so many that I was the first person to ask you to come on the show instead of you asking them. And then you thought maybe you made some kind of a milestone. So that made me feel really good.
I do think that is a kind of milestone. I've had a few people come on or ask to come on, and only two of them I was like, nah, this isn't gonna work. But yeah, I was stoked, especially when you were like, yeah, I want to come on, I want to talk about Ted Braden. And I was like, yes, I don't know anyone else that's out there standing for Ted Braden.
Yeah, somebody had to do it. And I remember you said, could you talk about him for like an hour and a half? And I was like, and I thought about that. I thought about it seriously because I didn't want to get like 30 minutes into it and just run out. And I thought, yeah, I think I can. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, and it was great. You were so prepared. You had examples of everything. It was great.
Yeah, that started a lot for me. So of course, Cooper Vortex goes on to be this big thing, like a big cultural thing. And it's just not just because it's Stevie Cooper, which is cool. And it's cool that this younger guy's bringing it back to life into this new genre of podcasting. And, because it's coming to people that had never heard about it. Because usually you'd have to be my age, you'd be an old guy like 52 or at least over 50 to even heard of it. And now younger people, not just because of things like Loki, but a lot because of you in the Vortex and being a cool podcast and seeing it out being a cool vehicle. So, like, how did you even come up with the music? Because I remember that little, the little chimey music you do before you do your DB Cooper story, how the case played out, and you do such a cool convinced version. And I know you said that was like your guilty pleasure to have that because you didn't want to have this long drawn out intro about how, because that'll all come out, this is for guys that already know the case. So I thought that was so cool. But how did you like listen to a bunch of different music and stuff first before you landed on that one? Because I love it.
Yeah, Russell and I had, I told him, I was like, look, I just want sort of like a cheesy Unsolved Mysteries vibe to the intro. And so we just sampled a bunch of free to use music and was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is the one right here.
Yeah. So you didn't go through it for like a week or whatever. It was just you like that. You immediately knew that was it.
No, it was, we listened to like, I don't know, 30 different free to use songs.
It's not too bad.
Landed on that one.
And this is one of my favorites you did early on. I love this one here. The guy that wrote it, Bradley Collins, that did this. My father was DB Cooper. And he was on the show. I think, I can't remember. Was he one of the early ones?
Yeah, he's one of the first 5.
Yeah, I did. This was like one of the best because that's when I knew that this wasn't just some absolutely serious. Gonna find out who Cooper is. This is when I knew when you had this one, like this is going to be this all encompassing. We're going to hear everybody's theory, no matter how crazy or it, or no matter how viable the suspect is or not. This is going to be the whole world of DB Cooper, no matter how strange it is or how strange the people are that follow this case. And I knew that this was going to be one big happy family because I thought this story was so great because it was like, yeah, my dad came home. He was gone over Thanksgiving, and he came home and told my mom to fix dinner, and she started yelling at him, "Where have you been?" And he goes, "Get my dinner ready," or something like that. And he said, "Well, the DB came from Dad, of course, and then
Dad
B
and
for
Bud.
Bud." It's like I laughed so damn hard when I heard that. I was like, this is fantastic. So that is like one of my all-time favorites is that episode.
I haven't heard from Bradley in a while. He used to call me every once in a while, so I hope he's doing okay.
Mm.
But that was an interview where he told me we were going to do it in this sort of loft above his friend's restaurant. And he gave me the address and everything. And I was like, okay, we'll meet there. And he's a hard guy to get a hold of. And right before I get there, like I'm driving there, I'm 15 minutes away. And he was like, oh, change of plans. Meet me at this parking lot
That's
of
scary.
some supermarket. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And I meet him and he was like, yeah, we'll just do it in my car. And I was like, okay. So I jumped into his Buick with my mics and we did it in the parking lot of, I want to say it was like a QFC was the store.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. I mean, because you're ready, you're gonna do all this, it's all set up, and then he changes on you in the last second. It's like, well, I'd be like, okay. I mean, that's a crazy story. And then it sounded pretty good. I mean, I wouldn't have known the difference. That's
Yeah,
I guess
because
that's
Russell
Russell's
cleans it up.
magic.
Yeah.
Right. That's Russell's magic. And I remember you said when you started the Vortex, you were working with Russell and y'all weren't even that close of friends, right? I mean, you worked at the same place, but he wasn't there when you were there. He would like be gone at different times. Like, did you even know that he was like into audio at all? Or how did that exactly come together with him doing it? Because I remember you saying that it was a little weird, like you just threw it out at him and he was like, yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. So Russell and I worked together at this company that was just absolutely terrible. The worst company to work for ever. But the guy who ran it, he had a real knack for finding great employees. Everyone I worked with there was an awesome, great person, except the company was just the worst. And so people would come in and out all the time. And when I finally got a new gig and I was done, I hadn't even started the Vortex yet. I didn't even have an idea that I was going to be doing this. I knew that if you put your 2 weeks in at this company, you're fired. So I'm not putting my 2 weeks in. My start date at the new company is on the 11th. So I'll work at this place until the 9th or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that morning, Russell was sort of the project manager. So sometimes I would like work directly for him. Sometimes I would be on a different project. Sometimes we would work side by side. And that morning, I was supposed to go with Aaron and Dimitri to do this other project. And I brought donuts in that morning. A bunch of other people knew that I was quitting. Russell did not. And I showed up and Russell was like, oh, yeah, change of plans. I'm going to go with Aaron and Dimitri. You're going to go with Jay. And I was like, okay, if I'm going with Jay, I quit. And he was like, what? And I was like, well, I'll work the day if I could go with Aaron and Dimitri. But if I have to go with Russell, then I quit.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to go with Jay, then I quit. And
Yeah.
Russell was like, well, you just said you quit. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm out of here then. So that was like the end of mine and Russell's relationship. We were good coworkers, traveled together. We hung out when we were traveling, but we weren't really friends outside of work.
Yeah. You didn't know him before that job.
No, not at all. And I do my first few interviews. This is like probably 6 or 7 months after that. And I do those first few interviews and I sat on them for months, probably 6 months. And Brian Woodruff, he posted on Facebook, this guy came around with big promises about a DB Cooper project, and it was nothing but lies. This man is nothing but a con man. something to that. But he didn't name me. But I knew obviously he's talking about me. And I was like, he's right. I sent him a message like, hey man, I'm going to work on this. You're 100% right. And I printed out that Facebook post and clipped it to my monitor. I was like, I have to.
Yeah, it was your motivation. Your
Yes.
motivation. Like, I'll never be spoken about like that again.
Well,
Because you're the nicest guy in the
on
world.
me.
That's why it's so weird. Because you are like the nicest guy in the world.
It was really weighing on me that I had asked for these people's time. They gave it to me, and then I just wasted it. So I was like, well, how can I do this? I made a couple attempts at putting the show together myself. It just wasn't very good. It wasn't going the way I thought. It was taking me way too long. And so I thought, well, do I know anyone that could help me with this? And I was like, well, I know Russell went to school for audio and video production.
Perfect.
And so I reached out to him. I saw his phone number and I was like, hey, meet me up this bar in Cuna and I want to throw some ideas at you. And he messaged me back and he was like, okay. He lived in Cuna, so I knew it would be like kind of on his way home. I meet him at this bar. I'm like, hey, look, this is a project I started. I can't do this. I need help. All I can offer you is credit. I have nothing. I can't pay you. So if you want to be involved in this, let's do it. And he looked at me for like 3 seconds and he was like, yeah, I'm in. And I was, really? You're in? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. I've been wanting to work on something like this. And I think this is a good opportunity. And then I asked him like, oh yeah, and you could be on air if you want, and we'll figure something out. He's like, no.
Yeah, he didn't want any part of being on air.
Not into that. I've tried asking him several times. But I gave him those first 5 episodes and he got them back to me like in a week. Hey, here's all 5 of them with the changes and blah, blah, blah. And I started listening to them and it was amazing. It was like, this is the show I wanted to listen to. It was so great.
He was just like the master of the editing and bringing it all together and making it sound good.
Oh yeah. And in the first few episodes, I got into Cooper Vortex gossip with a couple of people. I wanted to bring up specific things on the drop zone.
The really ugly side of.
And in one of the episodes, I know there was like a 20-minute segment that was just super hot, juicy gossip talk. And I'm listening back to the episodes for the first time from Russell, and it's completely gone. And I'm like, what the hell? That was the best part of this whole thing. And it was completely gone. Cut it out of the show. And so I called him and I was like, hey man, you cut out this segment. I thought that was
the best part.
Really good and really juicy. That was the best part. And he got animated right away. And he was like, no, you think it's the best part because you are involved in all this gossip and you know who all these people are. If someone's listening to this and they're not, then it just makes all of you look really bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I guess I see your point on that. I don't really agree, but you win this round. And looking back now, he was just like so 100%.
100% right. Yeah, because it's so tempting in the beginning. My editor's like that because I'm like, oh, I could go after this guy in my book or this guy's suspect. And then like, no. Think about that a little more. Like, yeah, you're right. That's not, I'm thinking out of my own personal stuff and not what the listener wants to see or the reader or, in this case. So yeah, he's fantastic. He's done great work. So I have like these cheesy questions for you, but like one I have to ask because I would give you 2 options. If you had a genie and you rub the bottle and the genie says, Darren, I'll give you 2 things. You can only have one. One would be you will be a successful podcaster and you will make a living at podcasting. You can quit your job and do it. You may, you're going to be, this is all, you can do. You'll have a big audience and this is all yours. Or you can have this envelope. And in this envelope will be the exact true identity of DB Cooper and all the details of everything he did, all the planning, how the money got to the Tina bar, everything. Which do you choose?
That is a great question. I think I would choose podcasting.
I knew you would say that. I know you.
I would choose podcasting because I'm currently living my life without the knowledge of what happened to DB Cooper. So I think I could easily continue my life not knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem would be that I would wonder for the rest of my life,
Yeah, because you could
should
have
I have
known. You could have
picked
had
the
all of
envelope?
it. Yeah, because I remember you said, like more than the identity of Cooper and knowing for 100% who it is, you want to know the planning and how the money got here and the drop zone and all the details too. So, but I knew you would say that. I do because you got a lot of talent at it, and it was like because what makes the Vortex great? It's all of it. It's you, it's Russell, and it was in the topic because DB Cooper's cool. It was just this cool thing for a young guy to think of and like because they're like, why is this young guy into this, this fit over 50-year-old crime? And that's just the coolness of it. So, and now I understand, because everybody's freaking out because they think, oh, the Vortex is going away. And it's now, I know that, like you said, when I heard your updated podcast, like the Vortex is never going away. You can't get rid of it. It's always going to surround you like the Force and Obi-Wan, right? So what's cool is that you're trying to now to do the Book of Darren, which is great with people that you know from the Vortex. So you're keeping, you're bringing your style over here without necessarily having, to do anything with Cooper. Like even when you had Bruce on, I mean, you don't even have to talk about DB Cooper because the people involved in it already are so interesting. They might have, all their experiences in life. I know you had Chris Williamson on, which you introduced to me, and I am so in debt to you for that and so many things. But introducing me to Chris Williamson, just a sharp guy, and all his knowledge. And when I think about people like you and Chris, uh, with all this talent, there's so many people out there that since we have these things like YouTube now and podcasting, that we get to know more of these people. You don't have to be like in the old days where you had to be some famous singer or on TV every night for people to know who people are. Now you can get to know people through the internet and do alternative media. That's what's so cool about it. But what do you really want to do with the Book of Darren? Do you want to see just to try to get more and more guests on? Because now it's infinite, right? With the Book of Darren, you could have on anybody you want, talk about anything you want.
Yes, I could talk about anything I want. I'm not pigeonholed into a 50-year-old unsolved aviation mystery. The goal for that show is really, when I started doing the Cooper Vortex, I thought I would do it for a few months. My goal was to do 20 episodes. I thought there can't be more to talk about than that. There can't be more than 20 people who have something to say on this subject for more than 30 minutes. And it just ended up keep going and keep going. And my first few interviews, my very first interview was with Robert Blevins, and my second one was with Bruce Smith. And when I left Bruce's house to go stay at my friend Dick's, who let me stay at his house, shout out to Dick, I was just like on such a high. I was like, I really loved doing that. I think it went so well. And I'm usually like insanely critical of everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I do is terrible. But I really felt like I did a good job and I really enjoyed it. And just doing the Cooper Vortex over the years, I feel like I've gotten a little bit better at doing interviews, at my speaking cadence, at being interviewed. And I really, really enjoy it. And I thought if I could interview some of these other people I'm really interested in, or maybe I could get some of these other podcasters
Mm-hmm.
to talk to me. And just the idea of, hey, I have this show. Will you come promote your book and talk about some other stuff? They might do that. If I just, called some author and said, hey, can I talk to you for 90 minutes? They're going to say, no, get lost. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know you.
Yeah, you got to have something already to offer because now you're known for the Vortex, and then you could you carry that over into to now the new podcast, which is great.
Yeah, unfortunately, the people I'm asking to be on, they don't seem to have much respect for the fact I've created the Cooper Vortex.
Yeah, it's big. It's as big as it is because of you. It's bigger than even Cooper should have been because of what you and Russell bring to it, and that you definitely made a name for yourself through it. So yeah, I think they should be. They're missing out if they don't see the genius in it.
Yeah, you hear that, Bryce Blankenagel?
Yeah,
Come on my show.
Blankenagel, you should come on. So who do you have anybody you can announce coming up on the Book of Darren? I know one guest you're trying to get on, well, that you already have booked for the Vortex that's going to come a few months from now. So you already kind of leaked that one. But what about the Book of Darren?
The Book of Darren, I don't have any awesome guests for you that I could leak. Ben Holland, who was on the Cooper Vortex. I might end up doing an episode with him, but it would be more about the auto industry, specifically like shortages and new cars. Because, automotive stuff is something I'm very into as well.
Yeah, I remember that video you did on YouTube where you changed the Prius battery.
Yes.
That was great. It was so cool the way you went through it. And this is, I actually watched that. I don't even have a Prius, but I'm like, this is cool.
I did so much research about replacing the battery in that car. And then we ended up getting another Prius, and I was so upset that we had to get rid of our other one because I really wanted to see how long that battery would last.
Hopefully whoever you sold it to is gonna keep you up to date.
Every once in a while on that YouTube video, someone will comment like, "Can I get an update on this?"
You never know who you'll find. And one of your last vortexes you did with this gentleman Robert Cox from England that you met at CooperCon, because of course you were the MC of the of last year's DB CooperCon that was held in the Portland area. And I thought it was super cool that you meet this guy. I guess he just showed up to CooperCon, Robert, and then you met him, or did he ever reach out to you and say, "Hey, this is cool. I love your show, but I'm going to be at CooperCon"? Or how did that unfold? Meeting this guy, because it's so cool meeting someone from England. It's just like totally into DB Cooper.
Well, he somehow became fast friends with my good friend Ben Holland, who was also there. And then Ben was like, "Oh, you got to meet this guy from the UK. Flew out here all the way just for this." And I introduced myself. "Hey, I'm Darren." He's like, "Oh, I know who you are." And I was like, "Oh, well, it's cool to meet you." And he just, because he became friends with Ben, I ended up hanging out with him quite a bit. Really cool guy, really sharp. And
Yeah, he made a great guess, and that was good intuition on your part, because he's just a guy that's into it, doesn't have a book, not pushing a suspect, just a guy that came into it, and his perspective from being in another country where people are like, "Who the heck is DB Cooper?" It was just good. Yeah, he wound up being a great guest, and that whole thing, start to finish, I thought it was really enjoyable.
oh yeah, and his accent gives you a couple extra points for being interesting. But I could tell he would be a good guest because when he spoke about the case, he would be serious, but he would theorize. He would tell you why he thinks this way, why he thinks that way, why that's a bad idea. And that's a good guest. You don't want someone you ask a question and they just say, "Yeah, no, I don't know."
They don't elaborate, and they're like, "Okay." No elaboration whatsoever.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, he was. I really enjoyed that. It's like one of my favorite episodes, just because here's this guy out of nowhere. He's from England. I don't know. I thought that was great. So I mean, one of the things you mentioned before too that kind of got you into podcasting was, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was like, was he a ex-Mormon or something?
Yeah, Bryce Blankenagel.
That's Bryce. Okay, so he's the one that does that.
Yeah,
And you said he became wildly successful doing this. Is he a former Mormon, or how does that? Okay, because it's funny, because I listened to you in an interview and you mentioned Bryce and that podcast, because he just like exploded doing it. And then all of a sudden I started getting these things in my Instagram feed for like similar ones to that, like ex-Mormons doing it. I guess they're all trying to copy him because he's the first one that thought of that. Like, I guess like someone could do ex-Scientologist or something to talk about it. So is he like really critical against Mormonism, or is he just kind of the way he does his podcast that makes it so popular?
Well, he has two shows now, like every other podcaster. He has a Glass Box podcast, which is a pretty good show. And then his show Naked Mormonism was the one that I
That's
found.
right, Naked Mormonism.
And that show, he's basically a historian, and he documents from sort of this religious uprising in the early 1800s in the New York area that leads to Joseph Smith, and then he tells this whole story. He hasn't even got to Brigham Young yet, and he's probably done like 400 hours.
Wow.
On that. It's an absolutely amazing show. I love that show. I love Bryce. I think Bryce is not a fan of mine anymore because he had a co-host. This is a funny story. He had a co-host on Glassbox podcast, and I'm a huge fan of Bryce's. So as soon as that show came out, I started listening to it. And I was not a fan of his co-host. And I thought I could do a better job. And I'm passionate about this as well. So I wrote this long email pitching myself to replace his co-host
on this other podcast. So this one's but this one has nothing to do with Mormonism. Is it more general, or is there a topic?
They cover Mormonism and sort of today news stories. They just did an episode about General Conference. And I wanted to be on that show. I wanted to be Bryce's co-host. And I had messaged him many times before. He always got back to me. He thanked me on one episode for supporting him, which meant a lot to me. I was a big fan of that show.
Yeah, that's huge when you're a fan of the guy and he influenced you.
And I sent that email like, hey, here's my pitch. Here's my resume. I could do a better job. And I'll be a sidekick. I'm not looking to run the show.
I mean, this is already after the Vortex is established, right?
Yes, this is probably
just making sure.
2 years
just making
ago.
sure, because this is a great story.
And he never got back to me after that, which was unusual. And so I messaged him again. I was like, hey, did you get this? I hope I wasn't crossing the line or anything.
Ghosting you.
Because it was all I could think about. And he got back to me and he was like, yeah, it's weird. And I was like, oh no, I did cross a line.
Yeah. And you didn't think you did. You thought you just kind of stepped up to it, trying to, because if you don't ask, you don't receive.
Yeah. And the co-host left and he got a new one. And that makes me mad too. Like, why didn't he think of me if he was going to get a new co-host?
But you weren't that critical of the other one, right? You just said you thought you could do better, or like you wanted a shot at it.
Yeah, I also specifically pointed out some things he did on the show or didn't do.
That might have been where you went. That could have been where you ran afoul.
Yeah, and it's probably a personal friend of his. So.
Oh yeah, he got offended by it. I mean, I heard a podcast the other day because I was researching a guy that was on this one podcast, and it was terrible. I mean, and this person, the host, had a lot of downloads, and like a whole lot. And I'm like, I didn't see where this person would warrant getting an audience like that. So do you think it's just kind of random why some people hit or they don't, or, is it just luck? Like, a lot of music acts out there, because there's so many talented people doing all this stuff that you'll never, ever know about. So with the podcasting, what do you think it is that just some catch on and some don't?
I think it's grinding. Just keep doing it. I got some advice early on that was the people who are still podcasting are the ones who are still podcasting. The people who aren't are the ones who stopped. And I really do think it's a grind. If you really want to be successful at this, I think sticking to a schedule would be ideal. I'm unable to do that.
I know, I'm terrible.
And releasing shows on a regular basis. And that way you keep the audience that you have engaged and you don't lose them. To quote Scott Fuller, your audience isn't taken away, it's given away.
That's a good quote. I mean, is it so saturated now? Because it seems like podcasting was just like crazy popular, like a year before COVID. And then of course COVID hit. So everybody's looking for all this more content. I've noticed even in YouTube on every channel, it's like a lot of the views are down just because I guess things are opening up more. People are going out, in different states that were kind of locked down longer than others. But do you think like now, is it just totally saturated with podcasts? Like people go to Apple or iHeart and there's so many that it's overwhelming, or is it kind of like slowing down at all, or how do you see it?
I think the hardest part for an independent person, someone who has a day job that wants to produce a podcast as well, in the last probably 3 years, the rise of like the celebrity podcast. So, your podcast audience is only so big. And then once every comedian has their own podcast to promote their show. All these actors and actresses are starting their own podcasts.
Yeah, I've seen more and
That's
more of that.
tough to compete with. Back in 2016, 2017, there were 100,000 podcasts, and now there's
Hmm.
7 million.
Yeah, it's
So
like crazy.
yeah, it's more difficult now than early on to find an audience just because of the space. But if you produce good quality content and you keep doing it, your audience will find you.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. So, like, if I go to Podbean and see the Vortex, because I still don't know so much. I mean, I have a book that I never read about podcasting, but so if I go to Cooper Vortex, and I guess that's the home platform is Podbean for the Vortex, right? Even though you're on all the other platforms.
Yeah, Podbean is the hosting service I chose back in the day because it was only like 14 bucks a month. Now there's
Hmm.
some free ones. There's some ones that will like insert ads into your show for you. So I don't know if Podbean is your best choice for hosting anymore or not, but
But it was
they've
in the
been
day.
uh they've been great to me, so I stuck with them.
Hmm. So if you go to the Vortex and you see, let's say you've got like 6,000 by one of your episodes, that's downloads. That's people that downloaded the show from the platform to listen later, right?
From
That's
from
not
any platform except YouTube.
okay. So, but if I'm looking at the Vortex an episode through Podbean and it says 6,200, does that mean that 6,200 people downloaded that episode to listen to later? Or could if they listened to it directly on the site and played it, are you not that doesn't count as a downloader? I never understood how all that worked.
I'm pretty sure it still counts. I know back when Spotify was newer, they had sort of this thing where they only had one episode downloaded and then people would stream that one episode. So in the beginning, I was getting like separate Spotify numbers, but uh, that's changed, I guess.
Hmm. And you had more downloads than you ever thought you would have, right? I mean, did you ever expect to do as many as you did, or you didn't really have an expectation, or you started seeing the numbers grow and you're like, hey, we really got something here, Russell? Or how did that kind of strike you when you started picking up?
My goal was that I would do, like 20 episodes or something, and then the total downloads for those 20 episodes would be 1,000.
Hmm.
That was my goal. And really quickly I sort of surpassed that and was like, wow, there's a there's a lot more people listening to this than I thought. Because when I released the first few episodes, the only audience that I knew I could get were the 37 people on the forums. I knew they would listen to the show.
Hmm.
I didn't think anyone else would. I didn't know anyone else that was interested in DB Cooper. I remember I told my friend Eric, "Hey man, I think I'm going to start a podcast about DB Cooper." And he laughed in my face and was like,
He's
"That
not
is a
laughing anymore.
that is a stupid idea and no one is going to listen to that."
Hmm.
And it didn't really deter me too much. But yeah, it I don't know when it really took off. Like there wasn't like some inflection point where all of a sudden I had 90,000 people found the show on Tuesday. It was
Hmm.
just sort of a slow burn. Every episode seemed to do better than the previous one.
Yeah, they just kept coming back. Yeah, I mean, I would have never expected DB Cooper to do it, but like I said, it's the magic that you found with the topic and Russell, and it's just been great. So I definitely got to talk about some DB Cooper stuff, or everybody will kill me. But I did one DB Cooper question for you is why do you think it's the only unsolved case of air piracy? And I think it's in the world, right? Not just the U.S. It's the only unsolved air piracy case ever.
I believe ever. I've said in the US once, and Bruce corrected me. He was like, "Is there an international one I'm unaware of?"
Yeah, exactly. That's what
I'm
he
like,
thinks of
I guess
everything.
not. Why is it unsolved? It's because he got away, Drew. That's
That's
why it's
simple. But no one
unsolved.
else did. No one
No
else
one
did.
else did.
Why only him? Do you think? I mean, and I'm not steering you anyway. I've never done that, by the way. I've never offered you, a ham sandwich or anything if you liked my guy or liked my book, and I've never done that, by the way. So I really appreciate all the praise for all of that. It means a lot. But it's just I love everything DB Cooper and things that go. But do you think, and that's why I'm never leading you anyway, I just want to know what you really think. But do you think that the FBI or someone, the high ranking people in the FBI know who DB Cooper is? Do you think anyone in the CIA ever knew, or is that just maybe just something you will never know?
I don't believe that anyone in the FBI or the CIA knew. There might be specific agents that have their own opinion. Like, what is it? Nick O'Hare that shot McCoy said
Yeah.
when he shot McCoy,
He
when
shot
I
DB
shot
Cooper.
Richard McCoy, I shot DB Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
So that was obviously that dude's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there was any sort of cover up. I don't think that they knew and they figured it out. I mean, you read the FBI files and it seems like they were working pretty hard to
Yeah, they
track
vetted a lot of
down.
guys. Yeah,
Yeah.
they vetted. I mean, thousands. Almost. I mean, really. I mean, it was over 1,000, right? At least that were documented. 1,000 possible
Oh yeah.
all day long. I
Plus,
mean,
you had Bill Mitchell at CooperCon say that the FBI would show up at his house or his dorm room with a stack of like skydiving association yearbooks and military yearbooks. Hey, look through these and see if you recognize anyone. Like
mm-hmm.
that really tells me they had nowhere to go.
Yeah, they were starting ground zero. They were going to the drop zones. Yeah, it did seem like, they did put in a huge effort. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The FBI reports definitely back that up, but I'm always curious, cautious of the higher ups. We never know what they know, but that's why I asked you, like, why is this the only one that's unsolved? Of course, yeah, he got away, and I know you definitely lean towards that he survived, and of course, I think he did, but it's just strange that he's the only one that's unsolved, because the others were just something would inherently go wrong, like Richard Floyd McCoy or Hanrahan or just something like that blows it up. It just always makes me go back to why this one is unsolved. I just don't know.
He was too good.
He's just too good,
and he was able to keep his mouth shut.
Yes,
Hanneman
that's
and
the big
McCoy,
thing.
they
McCoy
were
blabbed
both
it.
known. Yeah. Hey, guess what I did?
Yeah, McCoy blabbed it to his best friend. I mean, his best friend was a Utah state guard. Not smart. Yeah, he blabbed it. Immediately got caught. One of those things, and it's just I don't know. It's going to go on to the day. What about the Tina bar? Are you a firm believer now that the money was planted or got there by natural means?
I have no idea. I really have no idea how the money got to Tina Bar. I almost wish that it was never discovered because it doesn't answer any questions for us. It just adds more questions to this.
Yeah.
Why was it found there? How did it get there? Now, even with the diatom evidence, that adds more questions. Okay, so it didn't get wet in November, December, just in the springtime. Like, what the heck is going on with that?
Yeah, it makes no sense. The Bible group says here, it says, Drew, Darren, have you ever entertained the possibility that the whole thing was a psyop? I don't know. I mean, Bruce might follow that. I know Bruce likes to definitely all things a woo-woo. And, I know that's one thing that's great about Bruce. He'll look at all this stuff. He's got like half the suspects on the ground and who knows is DB Cooper. But, it could be, I don't like to, I know you get asked this stuff all the time. Oh, was it an inside job? Was Cooper even real? Was it the flight crew? They were all in on it and splitting the money. I never got into any of those really crazy things, but I don't think it was a psyop. And I don't even think, that the government set it up. I mean, there was nothing. It actually spurred more hijackings. It didn't curtail hijackings at all. It made it worse because no one thought about it, especially the 727. Like, McCoy did months later, because now, like, oh, that's a great idea. We'll just jump out of the aft share with a bunch of money. So I don't see that either.
I don't see that. They didn't need to create a skyjacking. There were lots of skyjackings already going on in that time period.
Yeah, take me to Cuba, all that.
Yeah, they don't need to create that.
Yeah, it never made sense. So we're definitely in agreement there. I think Tina Bar was planted though. I don't I just don't see how else it gets there in three stacks. And of course, me and my super sleuth friend Nikki B ran down the name of the Ingram's dog George. That's why Dwayne knew where the Tina Bar, because George the skittish police dog was running around the Tina Bar. Is how they found it. But it's just I don't know. It's just to me it had to have been planted somewhere somehow. It's just I don't see how it washes up. But I never got into the money really heavy. I just didn't. I like it. I think it's interesting, but you can go mad with it. You really can. I mean, trying to figure out how that money got there. And I know Eric gets really into that, and all these other guys that you know a lot better than me. That you could discuss it till you turn blue. The flight path, the money, and now we got the third thing that's everybody's crazed on is the tie, which Nikki B and I covered on the last show. Uh, and the particles that Tom K found on the tie. Do you think that the tie is a? I mean, it's fun. I think it's really fun to look into the tie particles. But do you think Do you think the tie could ever lead to Cooper?
I don't know if it could. Eric's sort of working on like where the titanium specifically came from. I think he has a theory about that.
Yeah, he's been working on different places. Once Rim Crew. He's been really trying to track down where those specific particles would all meet together somehow at a specific plant. I think one of them he found is a place called Rim Crew, which was interesting. So definitely wanted your opinion on if you thought that the tie would ever could lead to Cooper, because that's what those guys are like really into now.
I'm not sure if the tie can lead to Cooper, but if we knew who Cooper was, the tie would probably, oh, of course.
Yeah, it would be
No,
good if you already had or if it was a known suspect. I mean, anybody, anyone you could name, even the far out one guys, like John List or something. It's John List, right? I don't
yeah.
want to screw that up. Like if it turned out to him, it would probably push him up towards the top of the list if it could tie to him. So yeah, I agree with you. It'd only be good if it was tied to a known suspect, or because it'd be too hard to find him just based on where that tie could have been, in my opinion. But it's what else do we have to look at now, though?
Yeah. And there are some suspects who the tie sort of enhances their credibility. Klansnick, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Boeing.
Joe Lakich, I think Joseph Lakich, Joe
Mm-hmm.
Lakich, Bill Rollins suspect. He was working at an electronics facility at the time. Seems reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how reasonable Lakich is as a suspect, but the tie works with
Yeah.
Lakich. There are some suspects where it's like, how are you going to connect the particles on the tie?
Yeah.
Barb Dayton, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I think the tie came from a thrift store in that account.
Mm-hmm. Like
Dwayne Weber.
now everybody has to answer for the tie.
Yeah.
Everybody, if you have a guy, how do you tie your guy to the tie? It's just going to go on and on and on. But I know one thing that you like, and you're a big believer in, of course, and I'll put this up on the screen, is the Dan Cooper comic book. I know that's something that you feel strongly in, that influenced DB Cooper to come up with that name. Of course, when he hijacked the plane and he bought the ticket, he gave his name to the agent as Dan Cooper. Of course, DB Cooper, the media screw up. And of course, that name ties to a Franco-Belgian comic book called Dan Cooper. And it seems reasonable. He was fictional Canadian, Royal Canadian Air Force pilot. And, it sounds reasonable. I mean, why not?
It's too on the nose to be a coincidence. That's my opinion on it. He didn't say his name was Daniel Cooper. He didn't say he was Danny Cooper. He said his name was Dan Cooper. It's way too on the nose. I always use the example, if I robbed a train and escaped on a skateboard and I purchased my ticket under the name Tony Hawk, is that a coincidence or an homage to Tony Hawk?
Here's a good question. Uncle Jim says, and did the Dan Cooper comic ever wear a tie? That's a good question. I guess if you look through enough of them, I know you have I know you have at least one copy of a Dan Cooper comic, Darren.
I have a book, a Dan Cooper book. I think it's like 3 or 4 comics
All
put
in one?
into a hardback book. And I haven't even read it. I just got it because
It's
I
cool.
wanted the Dan Cooper thing. Yeah.
Well, let us know, and let Uncle Jim know if you find one with him wearing a tie in it. I remember seeing somebody posted somewhere. I don't know if it was on a drop zone or just an obscure post that in one of the Dan Cooper comic books there was a picture of what they felt was the actual drop zone, and in Washington State. And I can't remember the tie-in, but it was kind of fascinating the way it was written. It was one of those things that kind of suck you in. You're like, why would this Franco-Belgian comic, have the drop zone in it? But if it influenced Cooper, maybe he wanted to find that spot somewhere. I don't know, but it was kind of cool the way it was. The guy wrote it. Actually, kind of would draw you in the way it wasn't just some kind of a crazy conspiracy. It was kind of done well. It's one of those ones that kind of pull you in. But did you ever find out, or did you ever have anybody on the show that said how available the comic book would have been in Canada? Because of course it's Franco-Belgian. It's written in French. I think you said it was another language it was written into, not English, but there was Spanish. I think you said before on a show that there was a
Spanish and Dutch, I believe. Flyjack has done some work on the how widespread the comic was. And then also in 2011, Carol Azabrakis, I probably just absolutely butchered her last name, but she did a presentation at the symposium in 2011 on the similarities between events that took place in the comic book and the DB Cooper skyjacking.
Wow.
I don't believe there's any video of that, and I unfortunately
love to
didn't
see
attend
that.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bruce will tell you about it. Tom K will tell you about it. I
That
reached
could tie
out to
into what
her
I was
and
just
she
saying about
said
the drop zone being in there. That could
she
tie in.
said that she wasn't interested in doing DB Cooper anymore. So she wasn't interested in coming on the show to talk about it. But
Yeah, that's great. Like, why do people do that? Come on. I mean, share the knowledge and get over yourself. I mean, just like don't hold back because that's what we want to know. I don't know why people would ever want to do that, but I was wondering if someone ever did a real deep study on it. Like, was this, the French version readily available in Montreal? Does anyone know? I mean, because obviously, I would think the most easy place to run into this would be in Belgium, of
there
course.
was
But
a Canadian documentary on the comic book, and it's available. Nikki sent me a link to it. I had to use a Canadian VPN to be able to watch it. And I was going to have on the producer of the director of that show, but I think he wanted me to like buy licensing rights to distribute it in America or something. And I
that's
was like, dude,
crazy.
I don't have any money.
I know somebody out there that says you have tons of money, Darren. Don't lie. That brings me around to something else I wanted to ask you about that we talked about a long time ago. And that I ran into this stuff too. I don't know to the extent that you did, but when you're doing DB Cooper research, it doesn't matter who the guy is you're looking into, or if it's the Tina bar, or not even a suspect, but you could be, in this dialogue with somebody that you reached out to that might have some information you want, and they just stop talking to you. And it's nothing you did to push them over the limit. You weren't being like too pushy. You weren't Bruce Smith camping out at Tina Muckler's sister's front yard. But just being, just kind of a regular, hey, just want to know kind of guy like I am and you are. And then all of a sudden they just stop. I mean, and I remember you telling me you ran into that, and just the weirdest thing, like emails back and forth, like everything's fine. You didn't ask something crazy over the top, and then they just stop. I mean, and that's happened to me, and I know you said it's happened to you.
Yeah, I had a reporter in Portland block me after I asked him a question. I had a lawyer whose contact info I had, who probably had something interesting to say.
Wow.
Called him a few times, left a message with his office, called back on his cell phone number, and got this, Verizon message that the number was no longer good. I tried calling it from my work phone. It rang right away. So I was like, he blocked my number.
I
He
mean, was there
blocked my number.
was there any reason for him to do that? Was it like something that was so sensitive, or I mean, we're talking about DB Cooper. It's like
The
didn't kill
reporter
anybody.
and the lawyer are both connected, sort of. And so I wonder if there's some sort of NDA situation there. I wish I could talk more about it because it's very interesting, but I, d- I
You're not
just
at
don't
liberty
know.
to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just those. It's the strange things that happen. I know that some things that happened to Bruce where he was missing emails, something like that, and it's bizarre. It's like there's really no reason for it though. It's like everything's going along swimmingly, and then they just clam up. It's like some stranger. I mean, this doesn't even happen in the Zodiac case. You think it would be far more prevalent in a case where people died, but it's more in the Cooper vortex, in the Cooper world for these people you're trying to get information from would just all of a sudden get really uh shy, and they like in the beginning, oh yeah, and blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden they just go dark. I mean, just they cut off everything. Like it's like some outside forces called them and said, do not talk to Darren Schaefer anymore, or we know where you live. I've never
Yeah. And
understood it.
also, in the beginning, I haven't done this in a long time, but I had reached out to some family members of suspects that were covered on the show. And I was like, hey, would you like to offer a rebuttal to this? Do you want to
Wow.
come on and say that it's true? And 100% of the time, I've got no response. Just no response.
Yeah, you think they'd say, no, not interested, or just something, just a reply.
Yeah, if you did a podcast or a YouTube live and theorized that my grandfather was this bank robber and kidnapper, I'd want to I'd want to at least state my opinion on that. I wouldn't I wouldn't not I wouldn't just go dark. I would have something to say. Even if I don't want to be on your show, at the very least I'll call you and say, "Hey, look, there's no truth to that. This person is going around saying that. I don't really appreciate that you are promoting this theory." So I don't know, some of the family members I'd like to have on the show, like, hey, they keep saying that your dad or your grandpa, your uncle is this suspect. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on
Yeah, you'd think
him
he'd
being
want to weigh in. I mean,
investigated after
you
his
think it'd
death?
be interesting because it's like I said, it's not a serial killer. It's this dude that kind of is cool in folklore that got away. Beat the man. So Cooper, in a lot of ways, has this favorable image. At least in history. And you think they at least want to come on? Yeah, yeah, I think it's great. We think that your grandpa was DB, and they just don't want to talk. It's like Shawnee says here. Well, why do you think that? What do you think makes them shy or stop speaking? I don't know. I would love to know that. I had a good rapport going with Ted Braden's youngest stepdaughter, a great rapport. It was hard to get her to talk to me, and I gave her some information she didn't know that got her attention, and we had a nice back and forth. And I got most of what I needed from her, but all of a sudden she just stopped communicating to me. And I was never pushy, never rude, very friendly, and she just stopped. I mean, it was like in the same method, it's through Messenger, and just stopped talking. I'm like, I don't know who told her to stop. Like, don't talk to that crazy guy. It's just strange what you run across in the DB Cooper world, in how the people are.
Yeah, and a lack of response makes you wonder more than anything else.
Exactly. Exactly. You're like, what? Did the FBI call? Was it another sibling? Said, don't talk to that guy. We know the truth. You can, uh, somebody signed an NDA years ago. Yeah, it makes you wonder even more. Like, did you do something wrong, or did you step on some nerve, or I don't know. I've never understood it.
Yeah, I don't get it either. Because I obviously love talking about DB Cooper.
Yeah, I just you think they would just light up. I mean, just hey, blah 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 blah. But they don't. They just at some point they just start climbing up. I've never understood it. Uh, so what was the highlight of CooperCon? Because I would have loved to have gone. I wish the 50th would have been so cool to be there, mainly to meet you and Nikki B and hang out, which would be the high point. Of course, meeting Bill Mitchell would have been really awesome because he sat by DB Cooper. So let's start with that. Like, what was it like to meet Bill Mitchell?
It was pretty cool. I mean, he saw DB Cooper with his eyeballs. But I mean, it's been 50 years. He said himself, like, I couldn't pick him out of a lineup now. It's just
Yeah,
not possible.
Yeah, he's always been honest about that. He probably could probably remember the, like close to when it happened, the day of, maybe a week later. But after, like you said, he was shown all these photographs, and at least he's honest. Like, you could show me the real hijacker right here. Like, we would know definitively it was the hijacker, and he still wouldn't be able to recognize him.
Yeah, Bill Mitchell's a cool guy, but by far my favorite part of CooperCon is just sitting around drinking beers with Nikki, with Rob from the UK,
Yeah, just cool people
with
like that.
Eric, with all the people in the vortex. Marty was there. It was really, really cool to get together with all them. And some people will say, no one in the vortex gets along and everyone's nasty to each other. Okay, maybe that's a little bit true on the forum. In person, we're all just like so stoked to see each other. We, not everyone agrees on the same suspect, but we all just hung out and had a great time. Marla, Lisa's
Yeah,
story.
I love all that. It's just yeah, like Marla has such a great. It doesn't matter if you like LD Cooper or not as a suspect. It has nothing to do with it. It's a cool story. It's cool. She has the name. She has she has that cool look. She's this attractive looking lady that with her theory, and it just has this great place in all of it. Which I love. I mean, it's just all these characters. Like someone suggested before, you should write a book on all these people that you encounter in the vortex, like her, like Marla Cooper and the Foremans. And I know you always said, like, if you got to choose who you wanted to be DB Cooper, it would be Barb Dayton. With such a great story, of course. The first
The
gender
most
reassignment,
Portland story of all time.
first gender reassignment surgery in Washington State.
I believe so. That's what's said. I haven't really looked into that to try and confirm or deny that.
But it sounds cool, so we're gonna go with it.
Sounds cool. And in 1969, so she had
Yeah,
already
never even heard of
transitioned
it back then.
before the skyjacking.
Yeah, I mean, they sound like I know you met them, but they just sound like the nicest people in the world, and they believe it, and that's what's so cool about it. I mean, they flew with her. I mean, Barb Dayton, DB Cooper or not, is a fascinating individual. Like so many of the suspects are just fascinating people, even if they're not Cooper. It's always great to tie it to it, and could they be? But people like Barb Dayton, all of them. Kenny Christensen's an interesting guy. I don't know what he had going on, but he had something going on, and he was a weird guy. Something was happening with Kenny and Bernie, and just these characters that they're from Central Casting. All of them, all these suspects came straight out of Central Casting for Cooper.
Oh yeah, and that's one
Everyone.
of the reasons I wanted to structure the show that way so that all of these suspects were taken seriously in the episode. You can decide who's telling the truth. You get to decide what you believe and what not to believe. But I wanted to represent the stories of all these people. Richard McCoy, what a crazy, crazy life, crazy story. Ted Braden, crazy life,
Crazy
crazy
life.
story.
Yeah, that's why I had nothing to
Barb
lose with
Dayton.
Braden. Yeah, Barb Dayton. All their stories are just are insane that lead up to maybe being Cooper, because you had to be an outlandish person really to be considered for to do this crazy stuff. Sheridan Peterson, that guy, I mean, I just would I loved watching Sheridan Peterson talk. This guy is just fascinating. I mean, he's lived in Nepal. He was in Vietnam doing the refugee stuff. I mean, this guy was like just really, he's this civil rights guy, and I mean, he was an avid jumper. Of course, he was super smart. He was technical writer at Boeing. Cooper or not, he fascinates me. I like Sheridan Peterson. I could listen to him talk for a long time. He was a character. I mean, he
Do you have
just
his
had
book?
that. He was eccentric. No, I don't. I
In
read
your face,
some
I
long
do.
articles of his, but I didn't have his book.
The Idiot's Frightful Laughter. I I love having like crazy books or rare books. And so when I saw that that was available for purchase, I think it was available for purchase for like 27 minutes. And
Wow,
I got
there's not many. I mean,
right on that.
it's just there's very few. Like ha ha ha.
I don't believe you could order a copy of it anymore. And that's another weird story in the Vortex too. Like Snowman helped Sheridan get that thing published. And
Is
you
that
know,
true? I mean, is there any truth to that?
I believe so, yeah. I think Snowman has said that on the forum, but Snowman is one of these crazy characters that
Yeah. Do
they
you know
beat
who
up
he
on.
is?
No,
Do you
I
know
have
who
no
he
idea.
is? I mean, because I know a lot of people know who 377 is, of course, and it's not a big secret. But is there some that you don't even that you don't know at all? Like, do we know who Georgia is? Or and do you know
I know who
everyone?
Georgia is. Georgia, Georgia, if you're listening, please come on the show. I would love to have you on the
I'd love
show.
to have that guy, hear that guy on the Vortex. I mean, because he knows so much.
Yeah, and it's hard to figure out what his angle is because sometimes he throws out like weird sarcastic stuff, and it's like I don't know if you're being serious or you're joking. One time he threw out this thing like Ted Kaczynski was involved with Cooper or he was Cooper.
You
And I
know
was
if
like,
he, yeah.
I don't know if he's being serious or he's just effing with people. I can never tell with him. I invited him on the show once, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll think about it. Send me a link to the show." And so I sent him a link to the show, and I'd probably done like 25 episodes by then, well over
Mhm.
100 hours. And he messaged me back like 15 minutes later. I'm not interested. So I'm like,
Wow.
what? What did he hear of the show that was so terrible?
Hmm.
Georgia, come on, Flyjack, come on the show.
Hmm.
Flyjack is, he keeps telling me, I will come on, but I gotta wait for this and this and this to happen. So love to have Flyjack on.
Yeah.
Flyjack's another really interesting character, like Snowman, where he's fairly anonymous. There's a
Yeah.
handful of
So
people who know who
you don't
Flyjack is, but
really do you well, you do know who Flyjack is though, right?
yes, I do.
Okay, but he doesn't. It's not that carefully guarded, or is he just kind of likes to stay incognito, or
I think he likes to stay incognito. He he found that guitar.
yes, I do.
Bachman Turner
Yeah,
Overdrive.
Randy Bachman's guitar. Yeah, that was a great story.
Yeah, he found that guitar, and in that article, it mentions his name. So
Hmm.
I think he was, anyone would be very proud to have solved that mystery.
Oh
Hey,
yeah,
look
like
at
you'd want to
this,
come
what
out
I
like, yeah,
did.
that's cool to be attached to. It give you some credibility, in anything with research to have been tied to that guitar story, which is fantastic. But yeah, I mean, he's in there with a bunch of sleuths, so like a lot of those guys better really know what they're doing because there's people that'll figure out ways to find out who you are.
Yeah, and Marty told me that Georgia has like this, like he's printed everything out, all the FBI files. He has like this treasure trove of documents. I would love to talk to Georgia.
Yeah, he'd be great. So you don't know who he is?
I know Georgia's name.
Oh, you do?
Mhm.
But do you know much about him? Like, is he just a a guy that loves the vortex, just an average guy? He's not like ex FBI or something.
No, I believe he's a retired professor.
Oh wow, yeah, he knows a lot. I know him and Bruce have gone back and forth like an old married couple for how long? Forever. Those
Oh, I've
just
got
back and forth.
I R99 on the forum. I foolishly I invited him on the show. And I was like, "Hey, what do you think? You want to come on the show?" And he responded to me, "Unfortunately, I'm deaf. So I've
Oh
never listened
wow,
to your show and I won't be able to come
that's
on."
crazy. You had no idea. You're like, oh, now I
I
feel
had no
like
idea.
shit. Yeah, how could you know? You can't know if you didn't know. Oh, that yeah. I mean, yeah. Whenever I never. It's just those guys. Those guys are cutthroat. I mean, they're hardcore. I mean, they go back and forth. We know this. We know that. Don't bring that guy here. Blevins has been in there a long time. I mean, we're earning his stripes and all those stories, and you know, uh, uh, Cooper Khan and getting taken over, and he's upset, and this guy's upset. It's like, there's a movie there. That's all I'm saying. There's a huge movie there.
Yeah, about writing a book. You mentioned that, but I never spoke on it.
Yeah,
I've
one of the people in the comment section said you should write a book about all these people. Just
I've thought
just speak
about
favorably
that.
of me if I come up.
It would be nothing but trashing you. It would just be a hit piece.
It'll be good.
But I'm I know a lot about the case now. I've read a lot of books, talked to a lot of people, but I really still don't consider myself really an investigator in the case. And so what angle would my book have? It would mostly be my adventure in the vortex.
Exactly.
But there already is that book by Jeffrey Gray, who is a
That's
much,
true.
much better author than me.
That was a great book. I could see how that influenced you. It was just so well done. I just everything about it was good. It just everything about it. You know, the part where they brought how they brought Brian Ingram into the bar where the guy's daughter worked, and Brian was like a celebrity, and that just the way he did that was just great. All of it.
There's also a story in that book about a guy who gets let out of prison in Yakima, furloughed, and he's told to like wait in the drop zone for someone. And I've tried to sort of get more information on that specific story, but there really isn't any. And
Hmm.
hopefully I'll be talking to Jeffrey Gray soon. It's
That'd be
been
fantastic.
rescheduled about 900 times, but
Hmm.
that's definitely a question that I'm going to ask him about.
Yeah,
Because he
definitely
was
dig
able
into
to like
that.
check the prison records, and yeah, this guy was furloughed during that time period. So
Yeah, I would love that book was just so well done when he talks about the Tina bar and Brian can't remember if he dug up the money or it was his cousin or it's just great. I mean, just the way he just wrote it was such a great narrative because it's like he wants to find out who DB Cooper is, but he's encountering all these bizarre things on the way. It's just kind of like your trip through the vortex. I mean, all these crazy people and suspects and fighting and that becomes the bigger story is the personalities really.
oh yeah, and Jeffrey Gray does such a good job. You feel like you're right beside him in this adventure in the vortex. You're uncovering it with him as the book unfolds. And I'm not going to pretend that I'll be able to write anything close to that.
Yeah, but you ran across some great stuff. I mean, great stories. I mean, of all these people, and you're still building it, and finding out more. I mean, just guys like Bruce and all of them. I mean, just Nikki is such a great guy. I mean, like Nikki is always hitting it, man. He's always doing research is great. I always look forward to Nikki sending me something new because you never know what Nikki's going to turn up. You never know. He's going to find something here and there that's interesting and something I never knew. So I'm like, if someone's going to hit on something big, it's going to be Nikki B because he's hits it all the time.
He gets after it. That guy is
He
awesome.
does.
I love Nikki.
He's great. He's fantastic. I mean, meeting you and Nikki would be the highlight of any trip to Portland would be that you and Nikki for sure and hanging out. And then everything else is gravy of, seeing the sights and going up there and, the aerial store, even if it's closed. I mean, just seeing the area because I have no, I went to Southern Oregon like 5 months ago for a work trip. Didn't make it up to the Portland area, of course, Vancouver, but I can't. It's not really as dense as people think. Like where Cooper jumped, would it be? Because people say this would have been fairly easy to get out of if you had a plan, right? I mean, it wouldn't be just so dense where he jumped, where it'd be like you just never could get out, or is that still debated? Because you're from there, so you know it.
Yeah, there's some areas with some really dense woods. But if if you drop me in the middle of the night in November anywhere in that drop zone, I'm getting out. And I'm not a survivalist, I'm not a badass. It's it's a populated area. There are houses, there are businesses, there are
Some lights
farms,
down
there
the
are
road,
railroad
farm, yeah.
tracks, there are many rivers. So all you'd
Hmm.
have to do is find one of those and walk
Follow it.
along it till you got to something. The idea that he had to survive in the wilderness, no. Uh, it's just not true. If you jumped a little more north in the Gifford Pinchot Forest, National Forest, towards Mount St. Helens, then
Hmm.
yeah, it could be a very long walk to
Hmm.
civilization from there, and it's all woods.
Yeah.
But that's not where we believe he jumped.
Yeah. So you're a believer around the aerial, uh, that whole just north of Vancouver area, or just just east of Vancouver, right?
Yeah, I think the drop zone is pretty accurate. I was a big fan of the sled test until I read Dr. Edwards' book that just completely trashed the sled test.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a little less faith in that now than before, but I still believe the drop zone is more or less accurate.
Yeah, that's why it's great to, know the area, be there front, like, someone like you that knows it. It's like, no, it's really wouldn't have been that hard to get out, like, it's argued backward and forward. And there's these things that go on and on about the case that people start believing that aren't really true. Like I rewatched the In Search of DB Cooper episode, which I know you've seen again, kind of one of the things that got you into Cooper when you found that. Of course, Leonard Nimoy, and that was done, I think in 79. It was before Brian Ingram found the money. And I watched it again. And there's always something I find out that I forgot about watching that episode, and it's not that long. But yeah, Earl Cossey's in that episode,
Oh, is
and
he? Yeah, I haven't
yeah,
seen
he's in
that in
it,
a
and
long
he's
time.
wearing a helmet that says his name on it. It says Cossey on it, and I'd forgotten that. I'm like, wait, I've seen this thing at least 15 times. I don't remember Earl Cossey being in this video, and he is. And he makes the statement that if Cooper pulled, he definitely survived. And remember, Cossey was the guy. Wasn't it? We didn't Gray in his book was saying that Cossey was the guy that was always saying, "Oh, Cooper was a no pull, no pull." Uh, and when the book came out, is when Cossey's credibility started going downhill, right? Because in the stuff came in about Norman Hayden and who owned the parachutes and all this. No, they're mine, or I packed it and he owned it and all this. I still don't understand it all. I even wrote about it. You still don't even ask me who owned the parachutes because I can't tell you. But it was interesting that Cossey said in that video that he said if Cooper pulled that ripcord, he made it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, the other thing about Cossey too is in the vortex, it has to go down this way. Cossey is murdered in his driveway, like beat with a pipe or a hammer or something.
It's crazy.
They steal his wallet. They don't steal anything out of the garage. And then his wallet is mailed to his mother.
It's his mother. I didn't know that. I knew it got mailed back. I didn't know if it was who it was though. They got it. I knew it was someone in the family. And it was anonymous. I mean, whoever sent it back didn't leave a name, nothing. And there was no note, right? Just his wallet just showed up.
Yep. And it's unsolved crime to this day.
Do you think that there's any possibility it's tied to Cooper?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think Cossey is one of these guys, sort of like Ted Mayfield, who talked about this a lot, wanted to have some sort of involvement, wanted to be an expert, wanted to be the guy that people go to, sort of like me, about DB Cooper. So I don't think so. But the thing that gets me is I believe it's been a while since I looked into this, but I believe his garage door was open
Mm-hmm.
and he had a bunch of stuff in there, tools and whatever
And there
people
have been
have in
some
their
robberies
garage.
in the area. They
Yeah.
said, yeah.
And so the idea that you're going to beat a man to death with a blunt object and not wandering into his garage and take a skill
Yeah,
saw.
exactly. Well, if that was your motive, why wouldn't you? It is weird. I mean, why would somebody if you found the wallet? I mean, I guess they maybe the person that found the wallet had no idea the guy had been murdered, but I don't know. It's just strange. It's going to be one of those ones that people are always going to wonder about because he is tied to the case. And then there was this dispute over who actually owned the parachutes. I still don't know if did Hayden own all four? Did Hayden own them and Cossey packed them and just claimed to own them? Did even Bruce get to the bottom of that?
Flyjack did some work on what the parachutes were that I really like. Who owned the chutes? Who packed them? I don't know. The parachutes is one of the things I don't even like talking about because
Because you can't you can't. There's nothing definitive.
there's nothing definitive, and I've read so many different takes on that I have like 100 different things flying in my head that all contradict each other involving those parachutes.
Yeah, it's just crazy how that can't even be fully known. So it's like we can't even decide on who owned them, or actually, it's still in dispute exactly which parachute that Cooper had. I mean, and we know he cut one up. We know it was always said it was a Navy conical with a C9 canopy, and I think I saw where that's not even definitive.
It's not. Flyjack did some work on this, and all credit to Flyjack on this one, where the the unused back chute on the plane had 2 packing cards in it. And Flyjack believes that Cooper took the packing card out of the chute that he jumped with, and then intentionally or on accident or by mistake slipped that into the parachute that he didn't use. So Flyjack believes the second packing card in there that doesn't belong to that chute is the exact information for the chute that Cooper did jump with.
That sounds plausible.
Sounds plausible to me.
Yeah, that's great stuff right there to even try to figure out what happened there. Because Kasi always said, well, the one of them was a dummy training shoot that was shown up, one of the front shoots, and that's why it's great that Mark Metzler, such a great guest, and I mean that's one of my favorite Cooper Vortex shows too. Is Mark's because he's such an avid jumper, and when he breaks down all that because he's jumped all this equipment and can really say, yeah, he definitely, if he picked this Navy backpack container with the C9 canonical, whatever the parachute, it was absolutely a pit bull that you had to have coming out of a 727. So he did a lot of good for the case, really saying, yeah, he picked the right chute. If it was over a sport parachute, could not have handled that 200-mile-an-hour wind.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mark's a great guy.
Yeah. I love watching his stuff. It's great. Let's see what nobody says. Kasi may have been planning to make a statement that the chute had been sabotaged by order of the FBI. Detached canopy. See, I love where you're going with that. Nobody. That's my kind of conspiratorial thinking. I mean, it is odd. It is odd, and I know that when Jeffrey Gray's book came out, it put a lot of doubt onto Kasi. Because I think that's where Norman Hayden started coming from about him being the owner was that book. And then he starts losing credibility because, like I said, in the beginning, it was like, no pull. But like I said, that's why it's great to go back and watch those documentaries like that because he's in there and he clearly says if Cooper pulled, he lives.
Yeah. And if he pulls and lands in trees, he's either hanging there or he's able to get down, but the chute is still in the tree. And then that's where he landed right there. I could see the chute from up here.
Yeah, it's just definitely great. And here I want to read this, and this comes from our co-friend now, Chris Williamson. He actually posted this from somebody else. Is where I got it from. So I just thought kind of end the show on this because I thought to get your feedback on this. But it says it's from Lizards from Space, so it's going to be good if it comes from someone with a title like that. It says, my greatest fear. Yeah, I'd have to say that it's developing a time machine and going back to November 24th, 1971 on a flight from Portland to Seattle to solve the mystery of DB Cooper. But wait, there is no DB Cooper on board. And oh my God, I'm sitting in his seat and I have to become DB Cooper and hijack that plane to preserve history and prevent a paradox. What do you think of that?
I like it. I've never looked at it from that angle where like I have to do the skyjacking now. In all the many times I've fantasized about being on that plane, I would just go up to Cooper and wink at him and be like, "You're going to get away with this, dude."
Yeah.
And then go back to my time and tell everyone, "Oh my God, it was Barb Dayton. You won't believe it."
You knew it was her. I love that. Yeah, great pickup wherever you found that, Chris, by the way.
Yeah, fantastic. That's awesome. I like that.
Yeah, that's great, man. But I appreciate you coming on, Darren. It was a lot of fun. We'll definitely do it again sometime. Everybody needs to go check out. If you haven't heard of the Cooper Vortex, like I said in one of the ads, like you'd have to be living under a rock or been in a coma for 5 years to not know of the Cooper Vortex. It's just so big and it's so great. Even if you don't know the case, learn about it and listen to all of those because they're great. And then the Book of Darren is fantastic. I mean, I guess you're going to try to do a Book of Darren, kind of like come out like the Vortex's words. You have a guest because, of course, you don't know. You have to set it all, and then sometimes people cancel and you have to reschedule. But are you going to try to do something like maybe once a month on Book of Darren?
Yeah, I'd like to do every other week, but it's just booking guests is so difficult, and I'm a busy guy. I have a day job.
Yeah,
I
you
have a
have a day job like
family.
I do. It's hard. It makes it so hard, but people really look forward to it. Like it's amazing. And if I just know like one person out there, like man, they make their day or week to get a show done. I mean that's motivation. And I look forward to everything you put up, of course. No pressure, but the new show's fantastic. You and Russell did a great job on both of these, and I love where you're going with Book of Darren. I love the logo. You had that leather look. It was just so great. I mean, I don't know how you
It's
guys make
a
these
uh,
decisions.
it's a replica of the cover of the Book of Mormon.
Ah, yeah. See, that guy influenced you again.
But I used well that wasn't from Bryce. That's from
Oh,
growing
was
up
it? Had nothing to do
Mormon.
with Bryce.
But
So you were a Mormon? Is that how you got into Bryce, or?
yeah, I grew up
I didn't see. I
Mormon.
didn't know that. See, I'm finding out at the end of the show. We're gonna have to do another one now. I thought that because of you talking about the show, but were you raised Mormon and then got out, or how did that go?
Yeah, I was raised Mormon, and then I moved out of the house and didn't go anymore.
Wow.
Yeah,
So you.
I lived in a small town, and as a Mormon teenager, you go to seminary,
Mm-hmm.
which is uh, basically Sunday school every single day of the week. And because I lived in a small town, it was done at a lady's house because the church building was too far away. So I would go to seminary at 6 o'clock in the morning before school, get out at 7, and then go to school.
Ah,
And I did
how
that
many
for
days?
four
All day?
years.
All 5 days a week? You said
Yeah, 5 days a week.
for. Oh my
And
gosh.
I graduated from seminary and I spoke at seminary graduation. And then I basically never went back to church.
That's crazy. So are your folks are still practicing Mormons, or?
Yeah, they are my folks, my sister, my brother just returned from a mission in Calgary, Canada. So I am the black sheep of my family.
Wow. So, but you still see your family. I mean, I knew you had a brother. I saw something before with you with your brother. So you're still see them and everything, right? But is there like this weird, like you're the excommunicated, like you said, black sheep because of it, or is it just kind of okay now?
It's fine. I'm sure there are many things my mother wishes were a little bit different. But yeah, I get along with my family great. They just they don't really bring up religion around me,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, that
yeah,
that's
we're all
interesting.
still really close.
Oh,
It's
that's
there
great.
are a lot of Mormon families where a person in the family leaves and they're kind of cut off.
Yeah, I've
Because
heard
with
of that
Mormonism, you're either all in or
or
all
not.
out.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, I've heard that before. I mean, I usually just think if somebody's from Utah or Salt Lake, you think, okay, there probably are because I guess there's so many in the population. But yeah, there's Mormons everywhere. Steve said
Yep.
he's also an ex-Mormon. See, Steve, I'm learning more about you. Steve's been a long time follower of this
What's up,
show,
Steve?
and Steve's a good dude. Steve is a really good dude. He'll tell me later, Drew, you look tired. You need to go see a heart doctor. I don't know. Steve is funny as heck. He's a great guy. It's like the audience you bring, you start building up over time, and if you like what I do, you definitely gonna like what Darren does because we think alike. He's young, I'm not, but it's what's so cool. He's when a younger person comes in with why? How does a young guy even get into DB Cooper? It's crazy, but it's so cool, and that's what makes you good. You and Russell and these shows. I mean, sky's the limit. I mean, I'm forever in your debt for helping me get my start for sure. The guy you never heard of just sending you an email. Hey, I want to talk about this rogue Vietnam vet named Ted Braden. And you're like, bring it.
Yeah, it was great. I'm a big fan of yours as well, Drew. I Paratroop of Fortune, I think is a great book. I've recommended it to many people,
Yeah, you have. I
and
appreciate it. It
I'm
means
a
a
big
lot. It means a
supporter of
lot to the
you and your
editor that
book.
worked real hard on that book too. But I appreciate it. It means a lot, man. It really does. It's really come full circle. When you mentioned Braden is one of your top suspect, if you had to, like when you were asked if you had a gun to your head, you picked Braden. That meant a lot to me, man. It really did. I mean, and I never influenced you to do that, but it meant a lot. It wasn't. It was a big deal to me. It was really coming full circle, because just doing the research. I mean, and the fact that I was able to get it out there, and it resonated with you. I mean, it was huge because you've talked to everybody about this case.
Yeah, and you're a guy I like talking to because you'll also point out the things that don't go for Braden. A lot of times people don't want to talk about the fact that, oh yeah, my suspect has blue eyes. We're not going to bring that up. My suspect is only 5 feet tall. We're not going to bring that up. My suspect is a woman. We don't need to talk about that part. And
Yeah,
you're just like right away, here's the evidence against him. Here's the evidence for him. I
yeah.
can't push him over the line to where it's absolutely him, but I've brought it this close to the line.
Yeah, I do. I love starting out with the negatives. Like where do you go from here? I can't even put him in Washington State. I can't put him in Oregon. Uh, but if you're still with me after all that, let's take it from here and see where we can go. And if I still have your attention, this is what we'll do. That's one thing I didn't like about another group out there that had a suspect. Like they would never acknowledge one thing bad about this guy. Like you have to acknowledge there are
Rackstraw.
some things against your guy, but they won't do it. They're no, it's all good. There's all explanations. There's nothing bad. It's all good. That just comes off as disingenuous.
It does.
That's case breaker stuff.
The only other suspect I wish there was a really great book on is Wolfgang Gossett.
Mm-hmm.
Wolfgang Gossett is another one where I'm like, there's something interesting about this. There
I
is
like Gossett,
something
man.
about it.
I've always liked Gossett. Gossett's kind of what got me back into the case. I mean, I've always liked it, but it was hearing Galen Cook on Coast to Coast. I mean, yeah, I saw the deal with Rackstraw and everything, but I think Galen was on before that. After here, I think Greg. I can't remember. Because I guess Greg had called in and Galen heard it. Greg had called in Coast to Coast, and Galen heard that call, and then wound up being a guest on Coast talking about Gossett after hearing Greg Gossett talk about the possibility of Wolfgang being Cooper. And that's what brought me back in, really, was listening to Galen Cook.
I would love to have Galen Cook on the show. I've reached out to him. He sort of gave me the typical, oh, I'm waiting on this and this and this to happen. Or, oh no, he told me he was planning to do a book, but didn't want to spill any of his ideas on the show before the book came out.
Yeah.
Which I respect, but
Oh, absolutely.
Galen, it's been years and years. Where is this book? I'd love to read it. When I talked to Greg, I drove to Utah to do that interview.
How far
And
of a drive was that, by the way, from where you were at the time?
from Boise to Salt Lake, it was like 5-6 hours, something like
That's a
that.
good haul.
It was a long ways. But I brought my family. We stayed in an Airbnb, made a nice little trip out of it. But when I left Greg's house to go back to the Airbnb, I was just like, it's Gossett.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100% Gossett. I'm totally convinced. And well, part of that is just me being gullible. I mean, I've probably said that after I did every single interview, but I found Greg to be very believable. He wanted to have dinner with me before the interview, which I didn't really want to do because I didn't want to talk over things twice and get like a fake answer the second time.
Yeah.
But during that dinner, what he really wanted from me was to see that I sort of knew what I was talking about and that I wasn't cornering him to get him to say something to fit a different narrative. It was
Yeah.
just, I want to hear what you have to say. And he's, his father confessed to him on his 18th or 21st birthday. I can't remember right now.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother as well, the same confession.
Did you ever talk to the brother?
I emailed him once or twice.
Did he email back?
Yeah.
Did he confirm what Greg had said about the confession?
Yes, and added
That's interesting.
Some other details about the trip to Vancouver, BC. But Greg's just like, I don't know if this is true or not. This is something my dad said. My dad was a liar. My dad wasn't a good guy.
Yeah, so you started getting a little bit of doubt then because you heard that what they that Wolfgang could spin a yarn. I mean, like he was known for just telling bullshit stories.
He was, but there's something to that I cannot discount Wolfgang Gossett. There are
Mm-hmm.
suspects where I'm going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
No, Richard McCoy was not Cooper. No. Rackstraw, not Cooper. But Gossett, man, I find him interesting. And the fact that he was like this radio host and
Yeah, ghost
paranormal
hunter. Yeah, there's
investigator.
that
And
video on YouTube of him doing a ghost hunt.
was it a ghost hunt or an exorcism?
Was it the Exorcist thing?
I don't
No,
remember
I think
any
it
of
was a
them.
ghost. It was a ghost. The one on
Yeah.
YouTube of him
Salt Lake
from a
news
TV
story,
show.
right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a ghost.
Okay.
It was a ghost activity in a house or something.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. He has performed exorcisms.
Yeah, super cool. And he was a mentor to Clyde Lewis, which was interesting. And of course, Clyde started getting into Cooper because his connection with Gossett, and he was up there. I think he went to one of the DB Cooper days, or there's some video of Clyde Lewis up there at the Ariel store,
Yes,
telling his
I
story
met
because he
Clyde
knew
Lewis.
Gossett. Oh, you did?
Yeah, he was at CooperCon in, I can't remember if it was 2018 or 2019. But he was at one of those, came to some of the events. Pretty cool guy. He said he would be on the show.
Oh, that
then
would
I
be
was never
cool.
able to
You
get
even
a
thought
hold
to
of him
ask
ever
him.
again.
That
So
would have
it
been great
might
to have
be
him
he was
on,
just
just
being
to talk
nice to
about
me.
just to talk about his experiences with Gossett. I mean, yeah, he's an interesting guy. Yeah, he confessed to the lawyer. Some of this stuff isn't proven out with Gossett. Like, I know he was in Vietnam, but he never saw combat in Vietnam that I could see. He was a legal advisor, and I saw some things that said he got a Purple Heart or something in Vietnam. I have not seen everything that I read about him. He never saw action in Vietnam. So it's just like some of the things needed to be nailed down with him. But yeah, he got me back in just hearing Galen. And then I think according to Bruce, he just got either he heard something he didn't like about Gossett, or he just got burned out, and he moved from he was in Seattle, right? And then he moved up to Alaska. He was a lawyer. I know Galen's a lawyer, and he just said, I've spent too much of my life on DB Cooper and being obsessed with it and this suspect, so I'm just going to drop it all and go try to make a living. I've already lost too much money chasing DB Cooper. So I think that's what Bruce Smith said. I might have some of that screwed up.
That sounds about right to me. And then back to Clyde Lewis. Clyde Lewis told me some story about how Wolfgang like predicted or told him that he had some sort of cancer. And then Clyde Lewis goes to the doctor, and Wolfgang was 100% right about that.
Wow.
And talking to Clyde Lewis a little more, Ben Holland again and I were sitting together, like drinking beers with him, and he sort of went on this rant about how there was a Mormon angle to the DB Cooper story that no one talks about.
Now you have my attention.
And yeah. I was just like, what? Where
outside of Richard Floyd McCoy, of course, it was Mormon.
Well, because Wolfgang was Mormon for a while as well.
Yeah, I knew he's from Utah or spent a lot of time in Utah.
Yeah, he was Mormon for a bit because of a lady he was with, and then was Catholic for a while. So he was a wild man.
Yeah, definitely. Then he became like was it a Catholic sect that he became like a minister, some kind of religious like something. It wasn't Mormonism. It was like I think it was some kind of form of Catholicism. I don't know if it's the one
sort of Catholic.
I don't know if it's the one that Mel Gibson was into or something like that. But he was it became a priest.
Yeah,
he is an interesting dude. He really is. I am fascinated by Gossett. I really am. Like he's another one that gets added to the list of just dudes that need to be. That he deserves a book. He really does.
He does. Get to work, Galen.
Yeah. Galen, get to work. I don't know what you found out about him. Ted Braden is a shorter suspect, and so is Gossett. I mean, I found some old pictures of Gossett where he's standing around like 6 guys, 7 guys, and he's always the shortest. I'd be surprised if he was even 5'8". He's pretty short, which I didn't know. You just look at the other stuff on him, you just assume, oh, he's got it all. But I think more needs to be, there's more going on there. But he's an interesting guy. I always liked him, and I appreciate Galen for getting me back into the vortex, because it was hearing him on Coast to Coast AM that just got me right back where into everything. And then of course the whole Rackstraw ordeal, And I was hoping those guys solved that case. I really was. When they came out with the deal with DB Cooper case closed, I was like, this is great. The whole story of the hippie couple and the money, and I was like, great. I hope these guys solved it, but they didn't. And then Tina just guts the pictures of Rackstraw. Nope, it's not him. Next. And I was kind of bummed.
Yeah, I remember watching that, and that was, I wasn't, no one knew who I was in the Vortex yet, but I had been like reading the forums for months and months by that point in time. And so I was aware of who Rackstraw was. And when that show came out, I was so stoked. I remember I was traveling for work. I was watching it in a hotel in Dillon, Montana. And I remember the moment that the show sort of pivoted to being about Rackstraw. I was, what the hell? They're going to do Rackstraw?
Yeah, just like bummer.
Yeah, it was a bummer.
It was like,
and the way that show ended, like DB Cooper case closed with a question mark.
When she just destroyed it, like, like this isn't him. I mean, she was definitive, which brings me around. Do you think Tina Mucklow could remember? Do you think she probably could if she saw? Let's just say you have the real picture of DB Cooper. I'm going to say who that was, or who I think it is. But if you put that person down, do you think? I mean, she could look at that and say, yeah, that looks like him.
Maybe. I think she would say that looks like him, but 50 years. And how many pictures has she been shown in that 50 years?
A ridiculous amount. I mean, I don't know how many she's seen since, that TV show or leading up to it, because, she was a nun for a while, like a Carmelite nun and all this kind of thing, and didn't do anything until I think the Rolling Stone interview. But, I'm sure in the early days that she looked at so many, Bill Mitchell did, that you just couldn't remember. There's just so many, like, in your mind over the years, like, but when she looked at the photos of Rackstraw, she seemed to rule him out with some kind of conviction. Like, she seemed positive it was not him. And he looked pretty generic. Of course, he looked young for Cooper.
Norman DeWinter, Patty.
Yes. Yeah, Norman DeWinter. That's when that show really went south. It's when they introduced Norman DeWinter, the mysterious guy that was visiting the area. Yeah, it went south in a heartbeat after they said Norman DeWinter.
I've even read an account that Norman DeWinter story has already been reported on as somebody else.
Oh, really? He's been found to be somebody else? Like they found his identity?
I'm not sure if it was like 100%, but there are a couple of different theories on the Norman DeWinter thing, because that was a real thing that happened in Astoria, where this guy came around telling everyone he was rich, and a bunch of people bought into it, and he's just sort of like a flim-flam con man kind of guy.
Man, that would be just another great thing to follow up on. I mean, just the legend of it. And I don't know how that gets tied into Robert Rackstraw, because I don't see Rackstraw pretending to be anybody. I mean, he's going to be himself all day. At least, Nikki would tell you that all day long. Could do him, of course. Yeah, I don't know how they were really reaching when they went down that avenue with the DeWinter. I don't know why they wanted to go down there. And then, of course, the same group of guys now have a Zodiac killer suspect named Gary Post that you told me about. When the deal came out about Gary Post, you sent me a text. And that was the first I heard about it that day. Like, oh, something's going on with Zodiac. It never scares me because I'm confident in my stuff. But I was like, oh, God, because like we joke, like Zodiac gets solved 4 times a year. I don't know if Cooper does, but Zodiac gets solved 4 times a year. That's just the running joke in Zodiac killer land. But it's like, oh, it's this freaking same group. Now they've already tarnished DB Cooper. Now they're going to jump into Zodiac. Like they're hurting me on both fronts, but we just laugh it off because their suspects are bad. Both actually, Rackstraw's a better Cooper suspect than Gary Post is for Zodiac. So went nowhere, of course. I mean, it really hit a brick wall.
The thing about the case breakers is they come out with this theory. It's not really well respected in the Vortex. And when I say not really well respected, like nobody believes it. No one in the Vortex is pushing Rackstraw.
Nobody.
Not a single person. And the idea that they just say that it's solved and then move on to a new case and then solve that one.
It's madness.
Why don't I do that?
Yeah, and they know how to get the media's attention. I mean, of course, Colbert is a media guy. He's a news guy. He's a news producer. He's produced films. He knows how to get those I guess they call it a package, a media package or something. I don't know, but he knows how to get that to the right people. That's why Fox runs with it and ran with that Zodiac story and another news outlet, because he knows people and he knows that they're going to get it out there. He's probably times it too, and he knows it's a slow news cycle. He's like, well, let's just throw this at him. So the layperson's like, didn't that get solved last week? Aren't you into that Zodiac guy?
I have alerts set up so that I get emails when there's any sort of DB Cooper anything. And the Daily Mail in the UK, every like 6 months, they run a pro Rackstraw story.
I never understood that.
And it's always by a different author.
That's weird. I wonder why.
I reached out to one of the authors and asked them, like, hey, I just want to know why you wrote this story. Like, were you told to write this story? Is it a promotional piece? Is it a friend of a friend you're doing the favor for? Of course, no response back, but
you'll know if they also do a Gary Post story. Then you'll know. Then you'll know.
I don't have any Zodiac alerts set up.
Yeah, exactly. If they do a Gary Post, then you know it's his connections.
The only thing that sucks about my DB Cooper alerts is high school defensive backs with the first name Cooper. I get all these alerts. DB Cooper Smith is starting next year for the Lions, the Ridgefield Lions. It's like, that's not the story I was looking for, but
yeah, wasn't that?
But I got the link.
Yeah, so it's not. You don't get excited anymore when that name comes across. That's some big breaking story, which hopefully there will be. Hopefully there will be. I know Eric came out recently and was talking about the hair that they found on the headrest for DB Cooper, that I guess the FBI still has, that they preserved the hair. Obviously, they got rid of the cigarettes, but they found, like, I guess, a brown colored hair or something, or dark colored hair that hopefully one day could be DNA tested. I mean, I don't have any hope for that.
But it would be great. The hair in possession still?
I thought that's what Eric said. I thought Eric said that he believed that the FBI still had it in one of those little, lab slide things, that, there's a hair that they removed from DB Cooper's headrest, and it's in Quantico or something. I think that's what he said. Ask Nikki.
They should test that.
Heck yeah, test it in a heartbeat. Nikki cleared that up for us, because Nikki's all over it. And if they find that hair, I could compare it with what's in this envelope, and we'll get the show on the road. I got my DNA. Let's go. Let's do it. Now that'd be great. I mean, that's what we need.
That is what we need. It would be great if we could figure out who Cooper was, and then if we can get the story. Maybe his daughter knows. I know you're exactly the story guy.
You want to know the story.
He told her, and now that it's out, and now that he's exposed, she could tell us the story. But if it's they use the DNA to track down, oh yeah, it was Johnny Littleton that pulled this off, but he didn't have any kids. We don't know the story. We just know who it was. Then the Cooper Vortex has to make a hard left and investigate just this one guy.
Yeah, track his whole life. See what because now the DNA's led you to him. You got to figure out where he was,
and that could be interesting. But I've said it a million times. If we find out who Cooper was, but we don't get any of the story,
you're not. Yeah, you don't like it. You don't like.
I don't like it. I'd rather not know.
Yeah, you'd rather not know if you don't get the whole package. But you still know that you would rather be a famous podcaster, where I think you're heading that way. I really do. You're heading that way. I knew from the first time I heard you, like, this guy's going places with this. I mean, really great stuff, man.
Yeah, and 4 years later, here I am on the Drew Tube.
Yeah, you're in somewhere. This is the big time. This is the show everybody wants to be on. But no, it's great. It was awesome having you on. And we're definitely doing it again sometime, because I love the case. I love everything you're into, the comments you make. And just the one thing I thought of, you were interviewing Bruce Smith on the Book of Darren, and it just shows you how skillful you've gotten at this, or it stuck out to me. Like, Bruce was talking about something about, he's all over the place talking about these crazy adventures he's had. And he said something about, we could talk about my hair loss or something like that. And you immediately like transitioned into this comment about Jada Pinkett Smith and the deal at the Oscars. It was flawless, man. The way that you went off of him making that comment into the Jada thing was just, I was like, man, this guy's smart. He's getting like so efficient at this. Those things jump out at me. Like when you did that, I was like, man, he's just getting smooth.
Yeah, and Bruce had a hot take on that, and I was like trying to tiptoe around it a little bit because I'm like,
and it was perfect though,
canceled or whatever. So yeah, it turned out really good.
It was great, man. They're all great. All of them. I think I only have 2 that I haven't heard yet, but everybody definitely needs to go check out Book of Darren, because I just assume everybody's heard the Vortex, because if you haven't, you're dead to me. But you got to check out Book of Darren. Bruce Smith is just a great everything. And of course, our friend Chris Williamson, huge thanks to you for introducing me to Chris, who's just great. He's just such a smart guy.
Chris is awesome. I love him.
Just fantastic work. And he's got a book coming out, which is going to be great when his book. I'm going to have Chris on when that book comes out for sure. His Amelia Earhart book, and I love it. I love having these people that are just so on their case, like he is with that one. It's just, there's nothing about that case he doesn't know and can't just go off in any direction with it.
Oh yeah, and I asked him on the show, "Are you an expert on Amelia Earhart?" No,
and he says no.
I'm not.
Yeah, he's just, I love that. I love that about him. But he is. He's definitely an expert on Amelia Earhart. Even if you don't want to hear that, Chris, you are. It's just fantastic. Yeah, just running into guys like you and him, Nikki. That's worth it. It's worth doing all this just to know guys like you. It's worth every bit of it.
Oh, thanks, Drew. You're so sweet.
I know. God, man. Now somebody's gonna tell me. Steve's gonna tell me I gotta go see my heart doctor now. Drew, you're not sleeping. But man, it was a lot of fun, man. We'll definitely have to do it again.
Anytime, Drew.
And everybody, check out Book of Darren. It's on everywhere you get your podcast, wherever you're at the podcast store. But Apple, iHeart, Amazon. Of course, you can go to Podbean. Is it the easiest? Just go to Podbean, or is that
whatever podcast app you use? If you have an iPhone, Apple Podcast is on your phone. There's Google Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, Overwatch. Wherever you listen to your show, that's the easiest way to get it.
And remember, when you listen to these shows, log into the app or whatever you got to do and like it. Okay, I still have the most likes, I think, on the Ted Braden show on the Vortex, even though it's like 5 or 6, but it's still, because you got to log into the app to like the show. I'm not counting though. But definitely, hit the thumbs up on this, subscribe if you feel so moved, and check out all Darren stuff, Vortex, Book of Darren, and keep up with everything, because there's always something new happening. But man, I appreciate you coming on. A lot of fun.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Drew. It's a blast.
All right. Have a good night.
All right. I'll see you around.
All right. See you, man. Everybody in the live chat, have a good week or the rest of it. And we'll see you next time.